In February 2019, a sentence went around the world. "My battery is low, and it is getting dark." People shared it as the dying message of opportunity, a Mars rover that had just been declared lost after 15 years. And honestly, it is a beautiful line. Millions of people grieved over a robot because of it. The trouble is that the rover never sent it. Those words never crossed space at all. What Opportunity actually sent on its last day of work was a set of numbers and one unfinished picture. And I want to walk you through them, because I think the true version is better than the myths. Opportunity left Earth on the 7th of July 2003, folded up on top of a Delta II rocket. The engineers who built it signed it up for a 90-day job. Mars slowly kills solar-powered machines. Dust settles on their panels until the power fades, and 90 days was the honest estimate for how long the panels would stay useful. Nobody at the launch would have promised you a second summer. The rover reached Mars in January 2004 and bounced down onto the plains inside a cocoon of airbags. When it stopped rolling, it was sitting inside a small crater. The team called that a hole in one from nearly 300 million miles away. I want to explain how a rover talks to Earth, because the whole ending turns on it. Opportunity had two ways to phone home. It could aim its own small dish antenna at Earth and speak slowly across the distance, or hand its data in a quick burst to an orbiter passing overhead. Both routes end at the Deep Space Network, 3 stations of giant dish antennas spaced around our planet, so that Mars is always above the horizon for one of them. Every picture from those 15 years came home that way, as faint radio caught in the desert. The 90-day rover then worked for 15 years. It found those famous little stone spheres, the ones the geologists nicknamed blueberries, which form when minerals settle out of water soaking the ground. That is how we learned the plains of Meridiani were wet long ago. The rover survived dust storms, a heater switch stuck in the on position, and a sand trap that held it for about 5 weeks. By 2015, it had covered a full marathon distance, and the drivers held a small finish line ceremony at JPL. Its twin, Spirit, fell silent in 2010. Opportunity just kept going. By the summer of 2018, it was 57 times past its warranty, still working a valley on the rim of a crater called Endeavour. At the end of May 2018, a bright swirl of dust appeared in orbital pictures of Mars. Small storms are routine there. This one grew. Within 2 weeks, it had wrapped most of the planet, and the sky over Opportunity went from hazy to dim to something close to a moonless night. Scientists grade that darkness with a number called tau. A clear Martian day sits near 0.5. On the 10th of June, the sky over the rover measured 10.8, the thickest atmosphere anyone has recorded on Mars, so dark that at noon the cameras could barely find the sun. The solar panels, which deliver hundreds of watt-hours of energy on a decent day, produced 22. That is roughly enough to run a phone charger through an afternoon, and nowhere near enough to keep a rover warm overnight. That morning, Opportunity called an orbiter passing overhead, the same routine it had run thousands of times. I have read the records of that final session more than once, and the plainness of them still gets me. It reported the power figure, 22 watt-hours. The sky reading came out at 10.8, the worst in the mission's books. The cameras were, in effect, measuring their own blindfold. Then came one picture, the panoramic camera aimed at the sun through a dark filter, showing a pale smudge of daylight almost swallowed by dust. So little light reached the sensor that the frame filled with white speckles of electronic noise. Partway through the send, the link dropped, and the bottom rows of that picture never arrived. 3 minutes later, the rover shot the sun again. Only small preview versions of those frames made it home before the session ended, and after that, the channel stayed empty.
There's a severe dust storm on Mars that's threatening opportunity. As a result, the rover has fallen asleep and is waiting out the storm. The project team is very concerned. We're watching the weather, and we're listening with the Deep Space Network for signals.
Did that silence mean the rover was dead? The engineers thought not, and they had a good reason. Opportunity was built to protect itself. When its batteries run down far enough, it disconnects almost everything and sleeps, waking now and then to check if the panels have caught enough sun to recharge. The plan, then, was patience. Let the storm blow out, let light return to the panels, and the rover should wake on its own and call home. JPL set up a listening campaign for exactly that call. Through the rest of the summer, the big antennas checked Mars every single day, and a recorder captured a wide stretch of radio around the rover's channel, in case it woke up confused about what time it was. When the storm finally settled in October, everyone expected the phone to ring, so to speak. It stayed quiet for week after week, so the team escalated. Instead of only listening, they began commanding. Over and over, a dish in the Mojave Desert would transmit toward Mars and ask Opportunity for a simple beep in reply. They called the technique sweep and beep. The count of transmitted recovery commands climbed past 800 through the winter, on the way to more than 1,000. There were still sober reasons for hope. Maybe a coat of dust was smothering the panels, or a second fault had scrambled the rover's clock, so that it no longer knew when to listen. One hope remained on the calendar. Between November and January, seasonal winds sweep across that part of Mars, and in earlier years, those gusts had scrubbed the panels clean more than once. A lucky breeze had saved this rover before. The team stretched the campaign to cover the whole windy season and kept widening the list of commands, reaching for stranger and stranger failure cases. I went back through the mission updates from those weeks, and you can watch the tone change. October sounds confident, while the late January notes are already discussing final options. The winds came and went. As far as anyone can tell, the dust stayed where it was. On the evening of February the 12th, 2019, the team gathered in the operations room at JPL for one last try. Past and present crew filled the room, and by every account it felt less like a work shift than a goodbye. Through the 70-meter dish at Goldstone, they sent a final set of recovery commands toward that small valley on Mars. While the signal crossed, someone played a song over the speakers. Billie Holiday, singing "I'll Be Seeing You." Recorded in 1944, the commands arrived. No answer came back. The next morning, NASA called the mission complete after more than 1,000 recovery commands over 8 months.
I was there yesterday, and I was there with the team as these commands went out into the deep sky, and I learned this morning that we had not heard back, and our beloved Opportunity remained silent. It is therefore that I'm standing here with a sense of deep appreciation and gratitude that I declare the Opportunity mission as complete, and with it, the Mars Exploration Rover mission as complete.
So where did the famous last words come from? A science reporter in Los Angeles named Jacob Margolis had been interviewing the team for a piece about the rover's end. The deputy project scientist, Abigail Freeman, told him the last downlink basically said, "We had no power left." Project manager John Callas put the sky readings plainly. The dust was so thick, he said, that it was night time during the day. Margolis folded all of that into one tweet. The last message they received was basically, "My battery is low and it's getting dark." The word basically did not survive the sharing. Within days, the paraphrase had hardened into a quote, printed everywhere as the rover's actual dying words. To be fair to everyone involved, it was a faithful translation. The numbers really did mean that. Set the myth next to the real thing for a moment. One version is a goodbye, and it quietly implies the rover knew it was ending. The real last message is a machine doing its job while the lights go out. Here is the power figure, here is the sky measurement, here is the picture you asked for, minus the rows that did not fit. There is no farewell anywhere in it, and that is exactly what I find moving. Opportunity spent its last usable energy delivering data, which is the one thing it had promised to do. A weather report from a failing station on another planet seems, to me, a finer ending than any sentence we could have written for it. There is one more artifact from those final weeks, and it might be my favorite. Through May and early June, parked on the slope of Perseverance Valley, Opportunity had been building one last grand panorama of its surroundings, 354 frames in all. It finished the shape of the scene, but ran out of time before the color passes were complete, so in one corner the picture falls apart into rough black and white squares. NASA published it after the end, unfinished corner included, and I would not change a pixel. The rover also rewrote the ground it drove on. Because of those blueberries, Meridiani now sits on the short list of places where young Mars stayed wet long enough to matter in the search for past life. Even the name of its resting place lands well. The maps call that slope Perseverance Valley. And the song is the part I keep coming back to. We spent 8 months calling a machine that could no longer hear us, and when the moment came to stop, the people in that room did not close with code. They played a promise from 1944 at a silent radio on another planet. I'll be seeing you in all the old familiar places. So perhaps the last message of this mission never came from Mars at all. It went the other direction, from us to it. If a machine can be loved, that one was.